Perfect. It is now 10 o'clock. I am officially calling the meeting to order. Do we need to get Steve and Susan set with their technology?
It's the building.
Okay. Susanna, you seem to be totally doing great. Susanna's fine.
Yes, I'm great.
So,
and I'm really the only one that matters. So
I was going to say, so when all else fails, we're just going to resort right back to Susanna. So Susanna's tag.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So the meeting's been called to order.
It's typically how I opt anyway.
So
well, I'm on via my phone, so I don't have problems hearing or talking, but I can't I can't fix my video. It'll come back.
Video's good. As long as we can hear you and you can hear us, we're in good shape then.
I had been talking, but I had muted myself.
So here's my situation. I actually have an unexpected. Actually, it's our insurance adjuster is coming in today. Beautiful thing. My house is torn up, and my husband and I are tag teaming in one of the rooms in our office, or in one of the rooms of the house. So I have the internet and the computer area until 10:45, and then my husband takes over because he has to have it for a meeting he's doing, and our insurance adjuster comes. So I apologize. I'm gonna have to tag team with David. So David's gonna take over when I drop off, but I wanted to give everybody full disclosure that I unfortunately have to leave the meeting no later than 10:45. So given that, and the conversations that we have on the agenda, do we want to leave it in that order, or does somebody want to, do we want to change it up? Steve, what are your thoughts on that? Should we just leave it the way it is? Or I would like to be at least part for the next 2 workshop discussions. So I don't know if we want to just move the 2,
let's just move that
the
up.
most recent ones are.
Move that one up, because there's a lot in your head, I'm sure, on that.
Well,
about priorities.
Well, I don't see any of these that we don't want to address today. So I think we just plow through them.
But I guess the question is, Vanessa, if you want to be part of that, what's the next workshop discussion? We should have that one first.
I was gonna say, let's go ahead. Can
we at least set the next 2 workshops?
Yeah.
And then we can move on to the rest of the agenda, and then we can keep that where it's at. Is that reasonable or not?
Perfect.
Ryan, you good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from any board members? Are we good with that? Okay. Then do I have a motion to adopt the agenda with moving the first 2 workshop discussion ahead of the management update?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Do I have a second?
Second, David.
Thank you, David. All in favor? And I'm just going to do a joint one for this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Then on that note, we will go ahead and do the first 2 workshops as our discussion. Steve, there's a couple things I know we need to address because Nikki has already working on getting things together for the groups for the league play. After our, actually in the middle of our update last week, we had the governor that said we were able to play league play. I will not have a conversation with regard to the political nature of that. We are not obligated to do what they have authorized, but we definitely want to have the discussion. And I know that that Steve has already reached out, or Nikki has reached out to the groups to try and get a plan together. I'll open that up to Steve.
Yeah, we've asked the leagues if we were to reopen, what their schedules would look like for their summer seasons, and then how they would implement those schedules. So they were all due back yesterday, and Nikki's going through them. And then Nikki and I have a meeting early next week to look at the schedules and get everything prepared for you all to discuss next Friday. So we definitely would like to keep that as one of our agenda items for next Friday.
Any other comments from the board with regards to that?
Sounds like that's a more urgent one, not one we want to delay until late June or July. So let's have that one next week.
Well, I think one thing that that I'm concerned about, and we don't have to address this, but I do think that playgrounds will come into discussion then, because we are having kids in the same area again. So again, I don't know, I am not in favor of necessarily opening the playgrounds, but I think we at least need to have that conversation in open so that we can, so that all the board members can speak and share their views on that. Thoughts?
I'm fine with that, but I have been pushing hard to have this camera conversation for a while now. If we're going, we learned from the pool that having camera coverage. But we're going to talk about further opening. I'd like to really talk about the cameras and have Patrick tell us what to do and how fast we can do it, and we can make some decisions.
And we're definitely prepared to have that camera conversation. In fact, patented that information, I think, over a year ago, and there was a $200,000+ expense that was associated with it. So I can get that polished up and sent back out to the board next week, and then we can be prepared to have that discussion also.
Some of it was going to be working capital, some of it was going to be reserve fund, and I think Patrick and you were going to go through and say where are things the most beneficial so that we could really sit there and say, how do we get the most bang for our buck and how quick?
Part of it was an infrastructure issue too, wasn't it, Steve, as far as making sure we have the wireless and the internet capability in those areas?
There was a storage, a VMS, and Patrick's on. He understands the technical terminology a little better. I don't know how deep you want to get into it today, or we just wait until the.
Yeah, I don't think
fix that because we had approved those expenditures.
Yeah, for the field complex, and those are being implemented and running at the complex. So this would be a conversation for additional cameras throughout the community.
I'm good with not having that conversation now if the rest of the board is, but I definitely have some information out to the board with regards to what the next steps are in order to get that done. Is that reasonable, board?
Yeah, Steve sends the things out, and then we have this discussion, both the playgrounds and the cameras. I don't know if we can accomplish that and league play at the same time.
I think you could.
Let's give it a shot.
Because it's kind of the league play and the playgrounds have a common denominator that's going to drive the discussion. Just youth activities, youth services.
I'm good with that.
Thoughts? You're good with that, Brian? Okay. I agree with you, though. We do need to have a conversation. Cameras have been very, very useful, and the opening of the pools, as you noted. I think it's going to be critical as we move forward. Any other comments with regards to next Friday? I think those items are all related, and I think we can do it within a 90 minutes. Was that reasonable?
Yes. What else? What else is a top priority?
Good morning, all. Kevin.
Go ahead.
I just want to comment on that one thing. I know Susan sent out a list of outstanding topics. We have been, as we all know, tied up with the reopening and all that. If we can go ahead and split the next agenda with both short-term and long-term. So short-term things like the playground and cameras, like you're mentioning, things that are on the forefront. But I don't want to forget about those things that are on the back burner as well.
Totally agree.
One thing that I think would be good in 2 weeks, if we can get Ken Lee in, would be to talk about recycling. We put it off a little. He's had a few starts, and he's got to start putting together all his stuff to do next year's budget. So I'd like to suggest that's an item, and I'm actually working off that list I put together that Susan sent around, and I thought that was another high priority for maybe in a couple of weeks.
Sanitation, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one comment that was made by Ken at one point in time was, now with everybody being at home, sanitation expenses are going up. Our at-home garbage is increasing substantially. So I think that I agree. We need to be prepared for that. Do we want to do that for the following meeting after the 5th?
Sure.
And then what can we add with it that is on our list, to Kevin's point, that we wanted to do?
It would seem to me that we ought to get swim lessons dealt with one way or the other. It's going to be summer. If we're talking about camps and everything, we're going to start getting the swim lesson emails and everything. And that was also on that list. It's time for us to make a decision.
And Brian, I dropped out, my audio dropped out for a minute, so I just called back in on my phone. I missed part of that conversation, but I just picked up the swim lessons. We've been in contact with the YMCA, but we're waiting for them to get back in full operation before they send over their person to talk to us about possibly partnering up for swim lessons. So at this point in time, we're still trying to find a provider.
So we're going to just say swim lessons is a no-go then.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense when it comes to not doing summer camp and the other things where we're not getting a large groups of people together. But I mean, if we can get a provider, we'll certainly address that and bring it to the board to approve or not approve moving forward with that. But we have to continue working with the YMCA, and they put us on hold just because of dealing with the same COVID-19 issues that everybody else in the world's dealing with right now.
Yeah, but the reason I'm doing that, I don't know when you dropped, is next week, if we're going to talk about youth play, I'm expecting swim lessons to get brought up almost immediately. I mean, all these youth things intermingle. Right. I'm not doing pro or con. I'm just saying we ought to make a decision.
Yeah, well, if the decision's being made next week, we don't have a provider. So I think that makes the decision for us right now. And we can certainly still work with the hospital and see when they're going to start their swim lessons back up, but we're still in the process of trying to find a provider.
If we could add it to next week, though, to Brian's, since it is part of youth, and we can, at that point in time, we don't have a provider, we don't have a provider, and we can at least let the community know that that's at least not reasonable within the foreseeable future. Is that work, Brian?
Fine.
Yeah.
And then to Kevin's point, the community does not know the list, so I'm very quickly going to run through the list so that everybody's on the same page. Covenants, which were being discussed today, swim lessons, which next week, Island Village timing, which we've kind of touched upon, and we'll have more information on. Capital improvements is something including lawn sports, Lot B, artisan playground, Lot D, Lakeside Outdoor Performing Arts Center. That's all kind of the capital improvement clump. The next is 5, which is security enhancement, camera, other options, maybe a capital improvement money, to Brian's note. That's on our list. The front entrance of the 851 building replacement reserve. I know we were talking about doing stuff with that. I don't know where that is. Recycling with Celebration Sanitation. We've already discussed that. Will be our second in 2 weeks, not next week, but the week after. Stetson building lease. RFP, board packet, evolutions and performance metrics. Number 10, Finance Committee, which that is now officially put together. We are still welcoming more residents. Please fill out a form and submit it if you're interested. Technology Committee is number 11. What are they assessing and why, and what they aren't, and then how are we doing the budgeting evolution? Number 12, Communication Protocols, electronic media, and what is the reality of today's electronic world if we want to reach out to young adults in our community at large. I do think that kudos to Zoom, because I do think that addresses part of this. Number 13, maintenance vehicles, lease versus purchase. Amphitheater, rebuild or remove. Number 15, service area maintenance responsibility chart. Revision should be ready by the end of June with an attorney review. I think that that's in process. Number 16, celebration seal at Founders Park, the time capsule. Number 17, landscape contract, extend 1 year or go out to bid. Number 18, strategic planning, which we're working to get the next steps going forward with that. And then number 19, budget, and our goal was to start that in June, which is obviously coming upon us very quickly. So that's the list that we have here. And on that note, we can move on. We have for next week, we have our workshop scheduled now, our planned now. What do we want to do in addition to celebration sanitation? Is everybody good with doing celebration sanitation? Oh, and what about the security? Now that security was canceled too, officially on CCD.
Yeah, they were canceled last Tuesday. Yeah.
Correct. So
Jerry,
that's another thing that
Jerry's contract is canceled.
Do we want to actually add that into security in the future? So this would be for,
I think having that discussion about community policing and what sort of security we have. Also, as we're moving forward into uncharted territory with the larger economy. Security vis-a-vis the larger economy.
what do we think is going to be more critical? And I'll open this up. Kevin, since you had pointed out a long-term, short-term thing, is there anything on there, or Marianne or Debbie, that you wanted to make sure that you that are addressed sooner rather than later that we haven't talked upon or touched upon?
I mean, I don't have any, I don't have anything specific to mind. I just don't want to forget about it. But I do want to just say that we're in 15 minutes into this meeting, and I know that your time is short. So we can always discuss this by email throughout the week to go ahead and get anything. If there's anything from the residents, maybe if they want to throw it in the chat box, you know, after you just read that off, we can go by that. My main point is not to forget about that list.
So for now, what we have next week covered, one of the agenda items would be, we can fill out what goes with sanitation the following week.
Okay, I'm good with that. Anybody else? Diana, we good? Okay, hearing nothing. So we at least have that, and we'll keep that out. Like I said, the workshop's topics will still stay on number 5, so we can have a further in-depth conversation about it. Management update, reopening the gym.
Yeah, so Patrick's going to throw the graphic up on the screen again, and this was reviewed last week, and I'll just run down the list real quick again. We are looking at a reopening of the gym as a phase 1 reopening of the gym on June 1st. The reason why we picked June 1st is that's the day that the Celebration Hospital is going to be reopening their gym. And the governor has, through his fully reopening of phase 1, gyms are part of that. So this is in line with the governor's orders for reopening. We're looking at hours of operation of doing very similar to the pools, 2 hours open, 1 hour closed for cleaning. This fitness center will be disinfected each morning. We'll ask that only 4 residents, in order to maintain proper distancing, use the facility at one time, with no trainers or instructors or guests permitted. And then access will be by reservation only, and reservations will be accepted 24 hours in advance. And we'll utilize the Rec Pro system to where reservations can be made through that. Residents will be able to reserve a treadmill and an elliptical or weight training for 1 hour, and you'll be able to reserve 1 hour of time per day. And then sanitary wipes will be provided in the gym for the users to wipe down their equipment after each use. But then equipment will also be cleaned every 2 hours. And then we'll have the signs throughout when you walk in and on the door. But we ask that the guidelines and the safety precautions, as we've asked throughout all of our other opening of facilities, that those be followed by residents. And then again, just as we're working through trying to get these facilities reopened for everybody, be courteous, patient, and respectful of your fellow residents. And I know that there was discussion last Friday to say, let's just go ahead and wait another week since June 1st isn't until Monday of next week. So we pushed it to today to have this discussion to see if anything has changed with other gyms or other things going on. So I know Nikki's kind of been keeping track of that and keeping an eye out for that. So Nikki, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Yes, good morning. So just reaching out to other gyms around the area. Right now, so far, they've only been open for a week. I know a few CrossFit gyms just opened this morning. They did have modified hours. There's some gyms that are doing temperature checks. Folks have not reached a capacity of 50% so far in their gyms. They're separating their cardio and weight equipment. Right now, there are gyms that are not doing any reservations. They're just kind of counting attendance. And again, they have just multiple signages to ensure guests are actually cleaning the equipment as well.
So we'll turn it over to the board and get your direction on what you want to do with reopening of the gym.
Questions, comments, board?
I would make a motion that we reopen it June 1.
I'll second. Kevin.
Kevin, thank you, Kevin. Discussion from the board?
Thank you for a very thought out plan.
This is David. My voice will be the same as a week ago. I'm waiting for cases to drop. The weekly report showed the same number of cases in the state as we had a week before. So there is no droppage. So I will not support this. I think it's too risky.
Any other comments from other board members?
Oh, did I get frozen? This is Mary Ann, and I have similar feelings to David.
I'm not sure what the board thinks of this, but I would like to open it up since this is something that the board is very split on, just to get some feedback or concerns from the residents. This is usually a time when we are when we would open it up for the residents to have any comments. Any comments from board from residents? Anyone? Okay, then we have a motion and a second. I'm going to go ahead and do a call vote. David?
No.
Mary Ann?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Debbie?
Debbie, you're on mute.
Yes.
Debbie, I'm sorry, you were a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to make sure I heard you right. Diana?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, I think. I'm lukewarm at best at the whole situation. I think that whole thing, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I say that all the time at my house. But I will rest it to the residents to make the best decisions for themselves, much like when I wasn't really thrilled about the pool opening. You know, I try not to put my personal beliefs in other people's rights to be able to do that, as long as we understand it needs to be done respectfully. And so the motion passes. Again, there's 2 no's. David and Mary Ann are no's. And we totally
Vanessa, can I just
absolutely.
I just want to add also that again, like with the pools, we just ask that the residents please follow these rules, because if we don't, the first option is to close it back down again.
So
we just need to make sure we follow. We just need to make sure we're following through with it. When we, you know, we do have that power. So when we do see that the situations are being abused, whether it be at the pool and they're throwing graduation parties at the pool that they're not supposed to be throwing, or at the gym, I think we just need to say, no, we're closed. I'm good with that.
And Vanessa, one other point is, as we're watching the data, if we see increases with statewide and or local cases, we should be prepared to change once again. Meaning if the numbers are going up.
Absolutely, David, I agree with that. Yeah.
So we just need to, I'm watching this. I'm not liking what I see, but I just think we need to stay vigilant. And it's like, we're not opening forever. We hope we are opening forever, but if circumstances change, then I think we change.
As long as we watch where it's at. I mean, if it's going up in Miami because of urban stuff and it's different here, then we have
Exactly. We're looking local.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be a local decision, much like what we've been trying to stick with.
I mean, we were ahead of the county, which was ahead of the state 3 months ago.
So reopening the gym, discussion 2 is the covenants.
Yes, when we brought the reopening plan for the community to the board back at the end of April, Susanna put together some phases. So we've moved into phase 1, and she'll talk a little bit about phase 1 and how that's going so far. And then we'll just talk about what our options are moving into phase 2 and phase 3. And then we'll want some board guidance on which direction we'll be moving with community standards and covenants. So I know Susanna's put a lot of work into this. I'll turn it over to her and let her kind of walk you through this. And Patrick, if you could pop it up on the screen too, so that residents can see, that'd be great.
Apologies, are we talking about the reopening of community standards?
Yeah, community standards reopening plan.
All right, give me 1 second.
Okay, well, I can just go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday to everyone. Hope you're doing well. Like Steve said, the reopening plan for the community that started after the stay-at-home order was lifted included all the departments. And for community standards, it's a different kind of, you know, situation. Obviously it was suspended in April because residents were ordered to stay home. They couldn't do a lot of work. Contractors weren't available. Some stores weren't open. You know, homeowners have been having financial difficulties and challenges. You know, the concern for safety about being around even other contractors. So then on May 4th, when we reopened Town Hall, there was the slow kind of phase plan to see how the board wanted to readdress covenants into the community. And so we started phase 1, which was, of course, we had been doing all along, which was processing ARC applications. We've had 2 ARC video Zoom conference meetings so far. They've gone great. We've also been driving through the community looking for just more egregious items, unapproved changes. You know, sometimes people still don't know that you need to get things approved, so they're doing things out there. Responding to owner complaints. Commercial vehicles definitely is a good few hours a day, it seems lately. And then trash and debris, you know, cleaning up on the property. So during April and then May, we have not been doing regular inspections. So this is just a starting point of discussion for the board. We've put together kind of a proposed timeline, but that's just, you know, to get you thinking on how you want to go. So phase 2 is proposed for June, which is coming up, and the board has its first Board of Appeals meeting on June 10th. Also, we are having our final interviews today for the new inspector, and we feel like we'll be making an offer today on that, so we'll be training and getting that started soon. So that's great because you really need 2 hands on deck for this kind of work. Also, we propose following up on via email on previous extensions owners had asked for in February and March. And again, we understand that there's additional, you know, time that they may need, that everybody has their individual circumstances. So we're going to work with people, and it's just about reaching out and saying, hey, you know, these things were sent to you back in February, March. How are you doing? Let us know, you know, what your timeline. Things are opening up now, you know, contractors and stores, and there's more availability. Phase 3, also, I'm sorry, in phase 2, we are proposing escalating the first letters to the second stage that were sent in February, March. In other words, these were letters that were sent before the stay-at-home order, and moving into a second stage is not, it's not threatening fines, yet it's not proposing fines. It's just saying, you had already been notified of this. It's been a while. You know, where are you now? And we can also, normally it just says, you know, please address these within 30 days, and then we move on to the third stage. But we thought about adding in some more language in that says, we understand during this time you might have, you know, individual circumstances and challenges. Please communicate with us, you know, if you need more time. And we always work with homeowners on deadlines. So the proposal is to go ahead and escalate those first letters just to second letters during this time. The third phase is proposed in mid-July through September. And the reason that timeline is such is because the theme parks, Universal and Disney, are opening July. I think Disney is July 11th. So, you know, we're such a service industry community. So many people here in Orlando, Celebration, you know, have jobs with those theme parks and around those companies. And so I know the furloughs affected my family. And so the financial hardship has been, you know, tough for people. And so looking at that time frame, that allows us to give people time to kind of get back into the workforce, have the income flowing, and then start to plan for some of the things they need to do on their property. So July 15th, we were proposing that we resume inspections, but in a modified scale, which is down below, and we can talk about that. Also, re-inspecting second letters. This is the letter that comes before the proposed fine, and so that also can just be modified to say, you know, we understand we're still in a situation, you may have challenges, let us know. The proposed fines for the July board packet, this is when the homeowners have received emails, 2 letters. We've also communicated, but we haven't heard from them. And then we put it on an action item for the board to propose fines. And the next stage after that is there's a covenants hearing set up to confirm or deny those. So we're proposing that maybe that go on the July board packet for the board to review. And of course, they can reassess that at that time. In August, we were thinking that after the proposed fines in July, we would have the first covenants hearing. And that hearing would include items that were tabled back from the January meeting. Also, any proposed fines that came in July, and then any egregious items. So that's the timeline just for a starting point of discussion. Also, based on our feedback and discussion with the board last time, the modified scale of inspections that we would start if we did this in July would be looking more and focusing on general items such as cleanliness and orderliness, not focusing on the really high-end expensive projects like painting, possibly roof cleaning, and also not going really small on the minor items such as, you know, painting your porch light or maybe your mailbox, you know, unless it's something really big. So it'd be focused on cleaning. Of course, you know, sidewalks are so important. The whole community is walking on those, especially nowadays when we want to get outside. Driveways, all the concrete. There's lawn maintenance, which is so important, keeping your lawn, you know, maintained, trimming your shrubs. Any repairs if fences are falling down, we need those fixed. Parking, like I said, we've had a lot of commercial vehicles pop up in the neighborhood these days. And then of course, garbage and trash, when we get complaints, especially during April, we would get some complaints about people not picking up their trash. And so leaving things out in the yard and just, I don't know if they're doing projects or what's happening, but so we usually go and address those. And then, like I said, we're not inspecting the minor or the really major stuff, just kind of focusing on cleanliness and orderliness. And then finally, phase 4 is, you know, a timeline for the board to decide when they want to resume the high-end level inspections that we've always done in the past, and focusing more on the more major and expensive type of projects and even some of the minor ones. So that's all I have. I'll leave it up to y'all to continue the discussion.
Thank you, Susanna. One quick comment that I have just with regards to, before I head out, in the letter, perhaps just saying, if you are unable to complete this within 30 days, please contact Town Hall or contact Standards. That way it's simple, it's not putting anything in there. It just, if you can't get it done, reach out to us.
Yes.
Okay.
That is already in our first letter, by the way. Whenever we do first letters, it does say within 30 days, please either address the items or let us know what your plan is. But we can do that in the second letter as well.
Okay. Board comments?
Vanessa, this is Diana.
Yeah, Diana?
I think this plan is very well thought out. I think starting slow is the way we need to go. I'm in favor of this, and I do think we need to look at the higher level ones and the more expensive ones later on. But I think easing back into this and being very open about communication is going to be very well thought of with the residents. So I agree with this plan.
Thank you, Diana.
This is David. I agree with Diana. I like the detail of this. I like the emphasis on things that are doable and virtually no cost. They're just effort. I am particularly noteworthy of the item under cleaning about safety of our sidewalks, cleaning of sidewalks that get moldy easily and quickly. And that's a slip hazard, and none of us want to go to the hospital at this particular point. So I appreciate this, and I think this is the way to go. So I think you've done a great job with pulling this together.
Thank you, David. Kevin, Debbie? Marianne said, well-crafted plan. Thank you, Marianne.
Is this looking for a motion to adopt? Is that the status of this? Or
yes,
is this just, or you're just looking for guidance, general consensus?
No, we would like the board to give us a motion and a vote on this today to move this forward.
All right.
Well, do we want to have a discussion as to whether everybody? Go ahead, Brian. I would almost, before we motion, I'd like to get a sense for what the board thinks before we motion. That way we can just get it done.
I was happy with everything until non-inspected at this time. So let me just ask a question. If you need to paint your house and we don't tell you that you are going to need to paint your house, and then we decide on March 1 of 2020 to tell you you're going to have to paint your house, have we done you a service, or have we done you a total disservice? Because here's a major expenditure, it's not in your budget, and do we have people screaming that you should have given me a chance to plan? I know people who, let me just continue for a second. I know people who needed to paint their house. We told them they needed to paint their house. They told town hall they needed time to get there financially. Town hall worked with them as an example and stuff like that. So I like the plan. I liked it when I read it, but I struggle with whether we're hurting somebody or helping somebody if we don't look at something and then they have painting your house can cost $10, $15, $20,000, and oh darn, we didn't tell you this, and now you need to paint it immediately.
Okay, so I would say even during a regular inspection process that we were doing before the pandemic, we would send a letter out and say, okay, at this time your house needs to be painted. And then again, you please dress in 30 days, submit an application, or tell us your plan. So that has always been the process. So if we tell someone they have to paint, they have time to come back to us and say, you know, I can't do it right now. I can submit an application within 90 days. And then after 90 days, we know they're on track to do the work. And we typically in the past would give an extension up to 90 days to even submit. And then you have the 60 days to complete. And so I think that whether we were working back then or working now, that we're still allowing homeowners to have the time to be aware of the issue and try to plan something and let us know where they're moving in the process. I think
Well,
just now.
Well, it's not inspected at this time. That's my point.
Right.
I think to Brian's point though, so we left that as a timeline for board to decide, not to push the decision onto you, but because we knew that this would be a topic where it's going to be sensitive. Is it going to be an ease back in, or is it going to be perceived as the board's being insensitive by making these requests during this time frame? The other items that we've listed on here, we're ready to go, and we can implement this into phase 2 or 3 now if that's the board's desire. But we just want to kind of get the opinion of the 7 of you on where you feel we are within this entire COVID process.
Well, I personally think we're phase 1 and phase 2. I had no issue with. I don't think we have I mean, David drives his home a lot, and Mary Ann talked about it earlier. We really have no clue what's going to happen next fall. But we would all be fools if we said there isn't a darn good chance that there's going to be a strong reemergence. And I have repeatedly said, I think 2021 could be a very difficult year financially for a lot of people. So I'm with being fair. The whole thing doesn't bother me. I just don't want somebody's house to be so obvious that it's going to have to be painted and not tell them. And then one day we wake up and we say, we need your plan and we need it now.
So Brian, my question is, if the house obviously needs to be painted, I'm the homeowner, I should be noticing that myself. I want to take care of my property because I take pride in it. And I also want to paint it so that further damage or rot doesn't occur on my own property, and then it costs me more. So that's really on me. Thank you for the external reminder, but it's really on me.
Yeah, and we all know that there are people who would clean their yard up once every decade because they think
I know those people.
So I mean, that's the reason we do inspections.
I know. So
I'm okay. If it
board members, everybody, because this is one I.
Yeah, if it helps the board at all, from a management perspective, me personally, I think we're in a different time now than we were when the governor ordered everybody to stay at home. It would have been very difficult for a homeowner to plan painting when a lot of stuff wasn't open and a lot of people weren't working. But now that we're reopening, I don't see a problem with including that. But again, I know it's a sensitive topic, and my opinion might have been different on the pools than some board members also. So that's why we want to bring that in front of you all to have that discussion.
Well, and I also think that the challenge is the financial impact that the pandemic has had on homeowners and who have lost their jobs. And so, you know, opposed to maybe in February, people don't really have the money right now to do it, but you know, again, it's for the board to reassess down the line, but maybe if we don't see, you know, if we see things continue or to improve, maybe 3 months, the board looks back and says, okay, well now, you know, we feel like the economy is a little more stable, theme packs are, you know, back in business, you know, we can do these big items.
Any other comments from board?
This is Kevin. I'm going to just think out loud for just a minute. I agree with both Brian and David, even though points are similar but different. I agree with phase 1 and phase 2. I also believe that we are doing a disservice to our community and to our owners. And we're actually going to add fuel to the fire by not sharing what we notice. If we are going to go ahead and hire an additional inspector right now, you know, as needed, and go around and have an eye on the community, and if we're going to mark down, let's say on our clipboard, hey, this house might need to be painted, why don't we go ahead and just do the service to the community and inform them and say, hey, we're not doing anything until X date. One thing that I've, looking back to be consistent, I think we've pushed everything on Zoom tentatively through the end of August. Perhaps we go ahead and do a similar situation where we're going to still send out letters, we're going to make you aware, but we're going to revisit or re-inspect your property in September and decide if we want to evaluate on moving forward with the conventional process for fining or for second notice or whatever it may be. But I think pushing it too long will hurt us. I think going too soon might be insensitive. So I'm just trying to see a date that we've already been using as a reference.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, if I could, can I add real quick? It doesn't look like on this plan we're even talking about initiating fines until July. So even if we were to go back out next week and start looking for painting projects, and someone came back to us and said, we have a hardship due to COVID, we're unemployed, and we don't think we can get to this painting until December or January, then that would be something that we could bring back to the board and say, you know, here's the hardship. So we can, those are all part of the conversation. So the other point I wanted to make is that we're not adding an additional inspector. We had an inspector during the COVID-19 stay at home that unfortunately passed away, not from COVID, but from other complications. So we have an opening, and it was our senior inspector. It was someone that had been in this community for years and years. So we really believe as management, we need to fill that hole, or we will get way behind with inspections if we don't.
Diana, was that you that I think I heard somebody try to chime in? Is that you, Diana?
That was me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment would be that, I mean, if we want to add like a future inspection or a, hey, this is what we think future items to address, and maybe give a timeline for 4 to 6 months. But again, there has to be some personal responsibility from the owner for maintaining their home. Now, I do understand there's a lot of owners that they maintain their home based on our direction only. But I think maybe if we add that section that we say, you know, hey, we're looking at, you're probably going to need to paint your house in the next 4 to 6 months, you know, we'll revisit that inspection. Makes it more complicated for the inspectors and for the follow-up process. But if everyone is, you know, concerned about letting, you know, surprising people that their house needs painted or that the major repair is, that might be a solution to add that to these inspection letters to say, you know, future items that we're looking at that you're possibly going to need to paint your house in 4 to 6 months, you know, so we can look at that for the future. Just a suggestion, but again, I don't know how the follow-up on that would work from a covenants, from an inspection point of
view. Debbie, did you have any comments on this?
No, I just think it's like the other plans, it's going to require us just, you know, it's going to be very fluid and depending on how the situation changed, but I think it's a initially good proposal. I think we're going to have to take a look at hardships as they come up and just be very cognizant of that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
What if we took the last item, not inspected in phase 3? What if we took the last item, not inspected at this time, moved it down to phase 4 and said, those are all going to start in phase 4. And rather than we say timeline for the board to decide, why don't we say going back to Kevin's earlier point, why don't we say the board is going to address the timeline for phase 4 starting in late August or early September?
Good with that. Do I have now, since I think everybody's had an opportunity as a board now to kind of just vet things. Does anybody have a motion with that particular edit? Brian, I don't know if since you had made that suggestion, if you want a motion.
I would motion that we adopt the plan as outlined by management with one change. We move the last item in phase 3 to phase 4, and we say it's going to be addressed in phase 4. And then when phase 4 says the timeline for board to decide, I'd like to say that the board will discuss this in late August or early September, and then I'm happy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is that
Marianne?
Mariana?
Sorry.
Marianne, thank you, Marianne. No, that's okay. Marianne's a second. Any further discussion?
And from a management perspective, I think you see Susanna and I both nodding our heads. I think that makes a lot of sense.
My only modification on that is just to hold everyone accountable. Just say end of August, just so that it's not too soft. We will determine a timeline by the end of August.
All right, you want me to second, or we've already got a second, but I'm good with what David's changed there.
So
are you good with modifying that to just the end of August? Marianne, are you good with that modification? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then I'll call the vote. David, yes or no?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so there you go. On that note, I think that's a good time for, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, if you like David to run the meeting better than me, then it's a good thing for you.
Brian was between us two.
So David, you're it.
We'll put everyone on mute.
I hope everybody has a terrific weekend, and thank you all staff for all you do. And David, the meeting's yours. I'm checking out. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Just as I'm looking at the agenda here, which needs to go back on the screen, I think there were 2 other items. If I'm correct, Steve, with how the agenda is prepared, we've just done the overview of the process, and then the other 2 items were, or is the community standards moving forward? The lights part, is that? Tell me where we are. Tell us all.
Yeah, I believe that we got direction from last week from the board that the lights would be the Christmas lights that folks were putting back up when we were during the stay at home. And I believe the board was all in agreement that it's time for that to come to an end. So unless there's a disagreement, we can move forward with that.
Okay.
This is Kevin. I do have one comment regarding that. It's a hard spot. I understand where it's all coming from. However, and we show the support and so on, the Celebration Foundation signs with the heart would fall underneath that same category, would they not? I just want to be consistent on that, because we have a special rule for graduation signs that are in the yards, and we have a special rule for political signs. Where does this fall? And when somebody challenges, you're making me take my lights down, but those signs can say, and they're for the same purpose, what obstacles would we see ourselves having?
I think it's a good point. Both the lights and the signs are technically against the covenant, the community-wide standards and the rules that are in place. So if we're going to go around and start enforcing it, then I think Kevin's right. The signs have to be enforced also. Or we can, I mean, as we've done with the lights, we're in unprecedented times, and it was just something that we weren't enforcing.
I'm not suggesting that we go it, and I just want to make that clear. I just think that we need to remain consistent with the 2 of them together. And for that purpose, I would actually go ahead and encourage maybe we set that same rough date that we keep looking at, August, to evaluate. Just a thought.
That's a really good suggestion to just set a time frame, and then we can communicate that.
So your point, Kevin, there is that the lights and the heart signs we look at the end of August. So that exception can be maintained. Is that what you're suggesting?
I would suggest that, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that would make sense. Otherwise, we would have a problem when signs came up with something else. So
Yeah.
I think we need to look at that. Good point.
So
I think, I mean, I think if what Kevin said is a motion, I'll second it. And then, because then we need to communicate with the Celebration Foundation and with everybody that, hey, you know, there is a time frame out here.
Correct.
And I saw.
Yeah, and I don't know that you guys need to vote on this one, though. I think if we just get consensus and there's 4 that are in agreement, then we'll just continue moving in that direction. Yeah,
I'm in agreement with Kevin's point.
And I saw a few other chats, so I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
I saw
so
that,
we'll continue that direction.
I saw that Mike Jackson wanted to speak. Mike, do you still want to speak? You're off mute.
And thanks. No, I just texted out to everybody that I like that approach. I think waiting till August. I think David and Marianne have spoken very well to the fact that the thing is not behind us yet. And I think we're all concerned there may be a reemergence. I think if you push forward and took the signs and or the lights down now, that sends a signal to the community that, okay, it's done, we're beyond it. And I'm concerned that that sends a psychological message. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in August or in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think we'll have a much better idea. So I fully support that.
Yeah.
Actually, Mike, I thought after a summer full of rain, they were all going to have to be taken down because of the humidity. They're
high quality, Brian, high quality.
And the rain and everything. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your point, particularly about the message to the community. So thank you for that. And I'm going to mute you again. Is there anyone else that needs to speak to this? Or Steve, you feel that you have enough insight?
I do. I think we're good with that. And then for the next item, the easement trees, we discussed this pretty thoroughly Wednesday at the board meeting. ARC is moving forward with design guidelines, and they're going to have a legal meeting next week to talk about what can and can't be replaced in those. But I know CDD's had some discussions. So I think we're in a good spot when it comes to the easement trees, unless the board has any other questions or comments with that.
Yeah, we did have a good discussion Wednesday. Does anyone on the board have other comments at that point? Okay, so this, go ahead, someone.
Oh, sorry, David. I just think on the trees, we need to keep communicating more clearly with the residents because I think there is still some confusion on that. So I appreciate that effort to communicate more on that from management. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, Debbie. And once they get their legal opinion and then they come up with those design guidelines, there will be articles and things going out to the community. So, and through the magazine and through Friday Flash, so that we can just reinforce what we've been doing with that.
Perfect. Anything else under covenants? Okay.
No, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Susanna. X factor requests. Steve, you want to highlight what the request is? I think we've all read this, but.
Yes, I sent it to the board earlier this week, but the X Factor Dance is one of our programming partners, or one of our largest programming partners. And annually they do a kind of beginning of their season where they do costumes, where they give out their wardrobe costumes, and then they do pictures. So what we have given you is a proposal from X Factor to use the 51 building. The room won't have any more than 5 people at a time. They'll have a queue, very similar to what the Girl Scouts did when they utilized the parking area for the cookie pickup. But this gives them an opportunity with social distancing, wearing masks, and then keeping it under 10 to be able to let these participants, these girls and boys that are in the program, to get their costumes, which is a very exciting time for them, and then to get their pictures taken. So we think we can do it safely. So we'd like to ask the board to honor this request.
So just as I read that, just a couple of clarification points. One is the building is open right now simply for office business. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, and so they're asking to use a room that normally is not in use. So we're not open for bridge or anything else.
No, and the reason why we're even looking at this variance is because it wouldn't be more than 10 people sitting in there for long periods of time. It would just be 5 at a time, and then they'd release them, and then the next group would come in, and so on and so forth.
Right. So that makes sense. The other piece is I think that this was spread over a 2-day period. Did I read that right?
2 weeks.
Oh, 2-week period. So I wonder if there's a way, just in terms of efficiency, since the building is open, if you might have several different staging areas. I know you talked about, I think in here, 10 minutes between people. You could alternate rooms so that, you know, you move the photographer or move the setting. I don't know the logistics of all that, but is there opportunity to open up more than one room so that they don't have to spread over 2 weeks, unless they want to do it this way?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Steve, that Dave is saying. I mean, we've got that whole other side of the building there that we ought to be able to set it up, because it's got to be very difficult to organize a photographer over 2 weeks. If we could do a much more organized thing to make their life easier. I mean, I'm not arguing against 2 weeks if that's the only thing they can do, but let's make it easy as possible.
Yeah, and there's plenty of space, and I think we can work with them too on how we funnel people in and out of the building. So I think that their plan was the least impact on us and with the resources. But I know that the other board members have questions and comments, but Lindsay, the owner of X Factor Dance, is on the call, and if there's any questions specifically for her, she could field those also.
So how about
I do have one comment, I guess, rather, and this is more for management. Is it needed? I appreciate the update, so don't take this the wrong way. But this seems like it would be to our common points that this might be just a management item, similar to the Girl Scouts. I don't think we had to take a vote or have anything for the Girl Scout arrangement. But I was very happy to see that. Do you need a motion for this, or are you good as manager to go ahead and just make it happen?
If there's consensus from this board that you're okay with us just working with them and making it happen, then we don't need a vote on it at all. I mean, the Girl Scout cookie happened earlier than the meeting. This one, an email was sent out and we just didn't get a response, so we put it on this meeting just to make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
David, you know, this is Diana, and you know I have ties to both those groups. And first of all, thank you. The Girl Scout thing was an outstanding success. And I'm fine with you guys just managing it from your end. I think you guys will figure out a way of doing it. I think Lindsay's put together a plan, and if we can make it easier on the dancers, that would be great. But I appreciate you guys considering this. I don't think there's any issue with just having management deal with it.
Yeah, and this is not a conversation about them starting their programming back up or anything. That conversation will come back in front of the board, and that will include everybody utilizing indoor space for programming. This is just a one-time issue to try and get their costumes and their pictures taken.
Okay, consensus, make it happen, but if you can make it happen quicker or easier, do it.
Yeah, yes.
Yep, we'll work with Lindsay. I'm sure she'll be very happy with that.
Yeah, Lindsay's very responsible. She's been a partner a long time, and I think whatever her
she's great.
and it will be good. So I appreciate you all supporting that for her.
Mary Ann, do you have anything on this?
No, I typed what I thought in the chat box. I think consensus is fine. We're not talking about classes. We're talking about distribution and some photos and a single event that they have a plan around that meets the CDC guidelines. So I certainly am supportive of this.
Yeah, and it's like one person or one family at a time. So it's not a group. Yeah, so I think you have consensus. I think everyone, all 6 of us have weighed in. I mean, I'm in support of this also. I think we've all weighed in and say, manage it and make it as easy as possible, staying safe, of course. Make it as easy as possible for Lindsay and the group.
Great, yep, we will.
Perfect. Any other discussion on that? We've already discussed workshop topics for next week, and then a little piece called sanitation for the following week. Do we have any other action items or discussion? Vanessa gave me till 11:30, gave us all till 11:30, and so now we're ahead of 11.
David, just one quick item for the board.
Sure.
We are going to have the initial kickoff finance committee meeting. I think the date is June 10th, if I remember right. There will ultimately be an agenda coming so the board can see it and stuff like that. We're working with the team, but the finance committee is off and rolling.
Good. 3 new members, that's great. June 9th, Susan says. Thank you. Any other discussion items? Debbie, Kevin, Mary Ann, Diana? Steve, anything else? Go ahead. Someone's jumping in.
Sorry, that's me.
Oh, good.
One thing, I think we had talked about at our meeting to make sure that we remind people not to have parties at the pools based on what was happening last week. So please, just a reminder, no parties at the pools so we don't have to go to the next step. I don't want to shut anything down.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we know it's graduation season and we know it's birthday and summer season, but let's just be patient. The pools are open for residents and their families to utilize, so they have something to do to recreate over the summer. And if we start bringing big parties in, that's going to go away. So that's a very important message. Yeah. And our park monitors our park monitors are spreading that message as they go around through the community now also.
To that point, we have had the pools remaining closed down at 6 o'clock, which I mean naturally has happened with the storms anyhow. Is that something that we want to perhaps visit to now that we're not staffing them, and we're seeing that they are getting busier just during summertime? Do we want to go ahead and add another 2-hour window to that? Maybe that's something to talk about next week.
Why don't we put that on?
In my opinion, I think I think that we can definitely add that for future conversation. But in my opinion, the more you increase capacity, the less opportunity you have for it to be over capacity at any point in time. It gives people more opportunity to utilize the pools. More hours of the day. Right. So Kevin, I'll put that on if Steve and Susan would put that on for the agenda next week. And we have league play, playgrounds, cameras, swim lessons, and then pool hours. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Sounds good, David.
Yes.
Good. Marianne's hand up. Debbie said yes. Okay. Anything else for today before we end at 11:01? Hearing none. How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I heard that from Marianne, I think, or Diana.
That was Diana.
Diana.
Second by Debbie.
Second by Debbie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you, residents, for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy weekend.
Well done.
Have a great weekend.